what's up guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled Why Chicago Suburbs Feel Like Cities. Let's see what this video is about.
This is Oak Park, Illinois. At first glance, it might look like a typical American suburb. Quiet streets, single-family homes, and a population of over 50,000 people just outside Chicago. But if you look a little closer, something stands out. At its center is a walkable downtown district filled with transit stations, restaurants, shops, apartments, and public spaces.
This is literally what a city looks like to me. Like, what do you mean? This is not the suburbs. This is a downtown, a city.
And surrounding it are dense neighborhoods connected by a tight street network rather than endless cul-de-sacs. In fact, Oak Park has a population density of over 11,000 people per square mile, making it more dense than most cities. And Oak Park isn't unique. Across the Chicago metropolitan area, dozens of suburbs follow a similar pattern. Places like Evanston, Naperville, Arlington Heights, and Hinsdale all have compact downtowns, strong transit connections, and street layouts that feel far more like small cities than typical American suburbs. This is very different from what you see in most metropolitan areas across the United States. Usually, suburbs are dominated by wide roads, large parking lots, shopping centers, and residential subdivisions that are often miles away from any kind of walkable center. But around Chicago, they develop.
That suburb looks so cool with the little lakes and everything. I think those are lakes. That looks pretty.
Are often miles away from any kind of walkable center. But around Chicago, they developed in a very different way. And the reason for that goes back to something that shaped the entire region long before the automobile. In the mid to late 1800s, Chicago was growing at an extraordinary pace. Its population exploded from just a few thousand people in the 1840s to over 1 million by the end of the 1800s. As the city expanded, railroads quickly became the main way people and goods moved across the region. Rail lines radiated outward from downtown.
I can't even imagine, like, I don't know, the amount of people that are in America is just crazy to me, you know? Everything's just bigger.
Chicago in every direction. And along those lines, small towns began to appear. Developers would often build a station first, then lay out a compact street grid around it with homes, shops, and residential buildings within walking distance. Places like Evanston, Oak Park, Riverside, and Hinsdale were all established along these commuter rail corridors in the late 1800s. Residents could live just outside the more crowded city while still taking the train into downtown Chicago for work. Over time, this network continued to expand. By the early 20th century, dozens of commuter rail lines were connecting Chicago to surrounding towns across northern Illinois. What had once been independent railroad suburbs gradually became part of a much larger metropolitan region. But importantly, their original...
I think Chicago is way bigger than what I imagine in my head. Once again, like, let me think. What the biggest city I've ever been to is still like probably walkable in an hour, easy. I don't think Chicago is like that.
Layouts remained intact. Even as the automobile became dominant after World War II, the already established suburbs were not heavily affected, unlike newer ones further out. And the fact that they were never redesigned around the car still determines how they function today. Many of the closest suburbs like Evanston, Forest Park, Cicero, and Oak Park are connected directly to Chicago by the city's rapid transit system known as the L, with the purple, pink, blue, and green lines. These trains run frequently throughout the day, making it easy to reach downtown without a car. Farther out, a much larger network of commuter rail lines connects dozens of suburban towns across the region. Known as Metra, the system operates 11 lines with over...
I feel like here in Spain, like, first of all, the public transport is not as good. And second of all, there's just not much where you can go. In Finland, it's a bit more complex. And it connects to way more places. In Helsinki, in the center of Finland, But this still seems bigger, which is kind of crazy.
200 stations in total and stretches nearly 500 miles, linking communities like Naperville, Arlington Heights, and Hinsdale directly to downtown Chicago. On a typical weekday, Metro carries around 167,000 passengers in and out of the city, and the L carries over 400,000. For most suburban residents, commuting by train remains faster and more convenient than driving, especially as Chicago is consistently ranked as one of the worst cities for traffic in North America. Because of this,
oh my god, the streets look so scary to drive onto.
the areas around the train stations remain the busiest parts of town. Restaurants, apartments, offices, and shops cluster within walking distance, while residential neighborhoods spread outward in a relatively connected street network.
And I also said this in another video, but these suburbs look absolutely wild. Like, it just looks like you'll never get out. It looks like from like one of them scary movies where you walk in a neighborhood and then you just realize that you can't get out of the neighborhood because it's so vast, it's so huge. It's massive. I don't think that there's nothing like this anywhere near where I've ever been.
Residential neighborhoods spread outward in a relatively connected street network. But transit isn't the only thing that makes Chicago's suburbs feel different. The street layout also plays a major role. As you might already know, Chicago has one of the most consistent street grids in the world. The grid is centered at the intersection of State Street and Madison Street, and every address is measured from that point. 800 address numbers equal 1 mile, and 100 address numbers equal 1 city block. So for instance, if you're at 800 North, you know you're about 1 mile north of Madison Street. When the first suburbs were built, their street networks were designed to align with the city grid. That means shorter blocks, more intersections, and multiple routes between destinations. Instead of being forced onto a few large arterial roads, traffic spreads across smaller streets, which makes neighborhoods easier to walk and navigate. Additionally, Chicago's suburbs have an almost perfectly balanced density. Take Evanston as an example. As you can see, density is mainly concentrated around the two major train stations. Here you'll find apartments, courtyard buildings, row houses, and small multifamily buildings, along with shops and offices. If you go further out, you'll see more single-family homes and duplexes. In practice, Evanston functions like a small city built around transit. This kind of layered density is extremely effective as it allows enough people to live near the center to support local businesses and transit, while still providing lower density neighborhoods nearby.
That's really nice though. Like, you kind of live in a big city, but at the same time you have your downtown, you know, like you don't have to go far if you don't want to. I love that.
Compare this to a place like Atlanta. Originally, Atlanta and Chicago weren't actually that different. Both cities developed as major railroad hubs in the 19th century and became the dominant economic centers of their respective states. Parts of Atlanta also follow a relatively organized street pattern, especially in older neighborhoods near the city center. However, its suburbs developed in a completely different way. Take a suburb like Alpharetta, just north of Atlanta. Most of its growth happened after the 1980s. During a time when suburban development across the United States was almost entirely built around the automobile. Instead of compact downtowns centered around transit, development spread outward along highways like Georgia State Route 400. Residential neighborhoods were often built as large
That looks crazy.
subdivisions
I would get so lost there.
with cul-de-sacs and winding streets, designed to limit through traffic rather than connect different parts of the town. Shopping centers, offices, and restaurants were typically built along major arterial roads, surrounded by large parking lots and separated from residential areas. As a result, even relatively short trips often require driving. In recent years, Alpharetta has made efforts to densify and improve walkability in its core, but the overall development pattern formed decades ago remains largely the same. And ironically, the kind of suburban design we see in Chicago is now exactly what many cities across the United States are.
I feel like people should start like little corner stores in the suburbs. That would be such a good business. I mean, if I was living in a suburb like that where I have to drive to the closest whatever, if there was like a little corner store at the end of the street that sells like, you know, basic utilities, I would definitely use it. See? don't take that idea from, well, actually you can take that idea, just give me
trying to
25%.
recreate. In recent years, planners have started promoting what's known as transit-oriented development, building housing, shops, and offices close together around transit stations in order to reduce car dependency and create more walkable communities. We've seen this implemented in suburbs like Arlington in Virginia, Walnut Creek in California, and Bellevue outside Seattle, which are all now building dense, walkable districts around rail stations, something Chicago's suburbs had already figured out more than a century ago. All of this shows how well Chicago suburbs have aged. More than a century after they were built, that early design still helps to make them some of the most functional and livable in the United States. Thank you for watching.
That was a good video. I love, like, I don't know. I don't know why this interests me so much, but it's so crazy to see these suburbs and how like different they are to what I'm used to, like, and how massive. I mean, it just looks like it's never ending. But thank you guys for joining me for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.